Hello, everyone. I'm here with Brad Colbow of the Brad Colbow comic and other things. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, you recently, the main reason I wanted to talk to you is you recently made the leap from freelance to a full-time gig. And all the news out there is always people going from this to freelance, and I wanted to talk about the other side of that. So, congrats on the job.
Oh, thank you very much.
So,
Uh,
what made you do that?
well, it started about a year ago. After the iPad announcement, I was asked to come in to talk to somebody who was looking to build an iPad magazine, and his name is Charles Stack. He's well known in the Cleveland area where I live, and he's started several companies here and had some success with them. And he loved the idea of the iPad, and he wanted to publish a magazine for it. And he was looking for a designer to help, and it was a contract gig.
Gotcha.
And I mean, the iPad was literally announced like a week before I talked to him, and so I was really kind of pumped. I wanted to just get one, let alone like design something for it.
Right.
So I talked to him, and I told him how interested I was in it, and so I basically won a freelance gig with him to kind of design this magazine. And so we did an iPad or an iPhone magazine at first because we didn't actually have our hands on an iPad, and then after we did one issue of that, we ended up doing 4 issues of the iPad magazine over the course of like last summer and into the fall. So it started that way. And then as I got more and more involved, I shed off other freelance clients and decided to focus mainly on this magazine. And the magazine turned into a platform. So even though we're not publishing the magazine anymore, we're building a publishing platform that other magazines and other book publishers can use to kind of build on top of. And it's all built on HTML and that kind of fun stuff. So it kind of differentiates itself from a lot of the mainstream magazines that were out there. So I think for me, even though it's a full-time job, I kind of viewed it as a project. And as a project, it's just such a cool project, and it's a cool place to be in mobile. And I had been freelancing for 3 years at that point, and freelancing was fun, and it's the way to go. But you hit that point where you're tired of billing people every month. You're tired of hunting to work and doing that kind of stuff. I do miss it from time to time, parts of it, but this project was just a very, very, very cool project to be invited to participate in, and so it just seemed like the right move at the right time with a good crew of people that I was working with.
So it's basically something you'd be doing anyway.
Yeah,
it just
totally.
kind of works out. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And for me, it was a try before you commit type of situation too. So since I was in the office 2 or 3 days a week before I actually went full time with them, I knew what I was getting into, and I knew the team, and it was. I've worked several jobs before going freelance, and there's always like corporate things you have to deal with, and this is the first time I had worked with a team that was completely egoless, and
awesome.
that really spoke to me, and was a cool place to be.
Really refreshing.
Yeah.
I've been following your comic for a long time. How long have you been doing that now?
It's gonna be 3 years this summer.
Yeah. Pretty incredible.
I'm trying to figure out some new and interesting things to do with that. I've been thinking about doing. A couple of people have asked for like a book, like to actually publish these things. Because now that I have a bunch of them, unfortunately, most of them are low res, and so because I've just been drawing them in Photoshop and sticking them on the web. So a lot of them just aren't ready to be printed. But I was thinking it might be good to take what we have with our publishing platform and actually like push them into an iPad app or something like that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, how do you balance the illustration, which is really what you're doing, the illustration approach to the web development approach? Because you're really like, you draw, you do illustration, but you also write HTML and CSS and JavaScript and stuff, right? So
yeah, I don't do much JavaScript. I started off just doing pure visual design, like the graphic design. That's what I studied in school, and then I fell into web design because I graduated in like 2000. To spring of 2000, and so people needed web designers, and I was like, I can do that. I can design anything.
Right.
And so I learned HTML on the job. I was basically doing Photoshop comps, and right around the time that I started working on Flash early on, and then I hated Flash because it was so hard to make any changes or edits. And it was right around the time I really started to despise Flash is when the web standards movement took off.
Right.
And so I just started picking up some of the HTML and CSS stuff. And then as far as the illustration goes, I've always wanted to be an illustrator. Since I was a kid, I wanted to draw comics. And so I think your passion always takes you back to where you started. You know, you're always, there's that magnetic pull to what you really enjoy. So that's where the illustration comes in. It's just being able to do that kind of stuff on the side.
That's great. So I looked on your portfolio site for your design business. It looks like you do some iPhone work, as well as some website work. What kind of a mixture are you seeing? I mean, I know you're doing mostly the iPad stuff now. Are you pretty much only focused on that type of interface work?
I when I went full time with this job, I kept one of my freelance projects, which was kind of a fun, like portal site, kind of like Yelp, but a little different. It's a startup out in California, and that was a fun project, and I kept it going for a while. But I found that it's just really, really, really hard to work full time and freelance and do both really well. And I was the other project really. It deserved 20 to 30 hours a week, and I just didn't have that. So I've pretty much given up on all side gigs except for the comic strip, just because that's what I enjoy doing.
Right, you do that.
And it buys me more time to do it because I hit a spell last year in November and December when I didn't publish anything, and I really kind of missed it. It's my creative outlet when you can't do other creative stuff, you know?
Yep.
So I ended up dropping all the freelance stuff, and so now I'm kind of exclusively doing the job, which is actually more project management and more information architecture than design anymore, because we have a nice little design team in-house now. So we didn't have anybody to organize. We're getting these books, and we didn't have anybody to organize this content and put it in a format where we could actually then get it onto the iPad. So I've kind of filled that role because as a freelancer, you do a little bit of everything. So you can learn a lot of that stuff. So I'm doing that and more project management, making sure everything make sure the trains run on time, really. And then so the comic is really totally like a creative outlet. Like when you're done managing stuff, I can go and draw people and pigs and all sorts of stuff.
So you've gone from freelance to full time. What would the final note to leave with everybody here? What would you think is the strongest ability that you bring to that new team, having spent 3 years working freelance?
I think it's the variety of when you're on your own, you have to know how to manage your time, and you have to know how to kind of structure everything so that nothing falls through the cracks. And you learn that pretty quick when you're freelancing, because if a client doesn't get you content on time, or if a client goes missing for 2 weeks, it's your job as a freelancer to contact them and keep on them, make sure things keep moving forward. Because at the end of the day, if deadlines are missed, the client doesn't care if they didn't call you for 2 weeks. They only care that it's missed, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just understanding. That's something I guess when you're in the agency world, you kind of understand it. But it wasn't until I went freelance where it really kind of starts to sink in, and you trip over your own feet a couple times. So, so then when you go to the company situation, you can kind of fill that role a little better, and you kind of understand what your bosses are thinking when you're being asked to do what you're being asked to do. It makes a lot more sense.
That's absolutely true. Well, thank you for talking with me today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Keep on drawing, man.
Thanks. Talk to you later.